Hi guys, James again back with another video. I know it's been a while, but I had been working a long time on this video and hadn't felt like, hadn't felt like doing a video, but there was one or two that I was working on that I didn't feel that strongly about. So since you clicked on video, you know it is Top 10 Google Play Movies Part 2. Sort of a follow-up or companion piece like most of the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3s are to the last one. The very last one I did was Google Play Movies, Top 10 Google Play Movies Part 1. And just like that one, it's movies that I discovered partly through Google Play or finally watched through Google Play. So it was just I finally decided to watch it, and I found it on Google Play, or just scrolling through, found a movie I'd never heard of, sounded interesting, picked it up, and watched it, and loved it, or at the very least liked it a great deal. And so this one is a lot like that, but I'll just say it's a lot like that. Okay, so we will start with number 10. Number 10, we have a film from 2019 called Changeland. And this was a film, it was actually the directorial debut of Seth Green. And this one stars primarily Seth Green and Breckin Meyer, with not so much a cameo as a small supporting role from Macaulay Culkin, who's a friend of Seth Green and Breckin Meyer. Seth Green and Breckin Meyer, who are two of the main parts of Robot Chicken, if you've seen that show. And this one involves Seth Green's character, Brandon, who has just discovered, or has grown to realize that his wife has been cheating on him. So on the day, or the eve of their anniversary, he just picks up and leaves. Calls his friend, played by Breckin Meyer, Dan, and asks him to meet him at the airport, and they fly to Thailand. Now, this movie was actually shot on location in Thailand. The movie is beautiful. Like, Seth Green, awesome job. This movie is beautiful. Makes you want to go to Thailand. And he basically, it turns out that was going to be a surprise for his wife. For their anniversary was the trip to Thailand, so he decided to take it himself with his longtime best friend. And so they're set up in like not the honeymoon suite, but a couple's suite and stuff. Everything that was supposed to be for him and his wife is for him and his best friend. And it's sort of not like a journey of discovery, but or rediscovery, self-discovery. Him basically trying to find a direction for him to go in his life, how to go forward. And he hasn't even talked to his wife that he suspects she's been cheating on him. He just left. Whether or not he's going to, you don't know. The movie kind of leaves it open-ended. But the only I'd say the only downside I'd have of this film, and it's an unfair downside because there's a man his heart is sunk because his wife is cheating on him. So he doesn't smile. Seth Green's character doesn't smile a whole lot in the film. He's like very down and somber, but he's supposed to be. So if I say it's a downside, it's just something that's supposed to be part of the movie. You want to see Seth Green all happy-go-lucky, but that's not to be in this movie. At least not for most of it. Great movie, excellently shot, and great acted. Like with Breckin Meyer provides most of the comic relief in this film, and Macaulay Culkin too. So anyway, that's Changeland. Number 9, we have a film from 2008, which I wasn't even aware of, and this one was like 13 years ago. And this one, another directorial debut. This is called The Merry Gentleman. if I didn't say the title already, The Merry Gentleman from 2008, and this is the directorial debut of Michael Keaton. And he is one of the stars of it, along with Scottish actress Kelly MacDonald, and you've got Bobby Cannavale in there as well. And this one, Michael Keaton wasn't the original director, it was the writer, it was the writer, Ron Lezaretti. He was the writer, and he was planning on directing it, but he had I think he had his appendix burst, needed emergency surgery or something, so he was out of commission. And so rather than let the movie get canceled or fail, let the movie get shut down, Michael Keaton stepped up and offered his services as director, because he'd been looking for a project to be his first directorial effort. And this movie is great. I'm going to say that about all of them, whatever. This one involves a woman, played by Kelly MacDonald, who is in an abusive relationship with her husband, he's a cop, played by Bobby Cannavale. And just one night after he hits her for the last time, I guess, she ups and leaves town. Doesn't tell anyone where she's going, just moves to a new town and gets a job there. And one night when she's leaving work with one of her work friends, she's hoping it's around Christmas time, so she's hoping it snows. And they walk outside, and all of a sudden it's snowing. So she's looking up, looking at the snow, and she sees a man on the top of a building. And this is Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton plays a hitman, and he had just shot someone elsewhere in that building, and was looking through the scope, shot the guy, and then was looking around and saw her. This was prior to her leaving the building, and sees her through the window. And so he finishes his job, and he's a little sick. He ends up having pneumonia. He's a little sick, but he's also a little bit at the end of his rope. He's a little suicidal. So he stands up on the edge of the building, and he's about to jump. And she walks out. When she, as I said, when she sees the snow, she looks up, sees him, and then she shouts, "No!" And he is startled and falls backwards onto the building. And she calls the cops. They show up, and then she tells them her story. They go to the building, and obviously there's no one there. No evidence that anyone was there. And as the movie goes on, they meet. She gets a Christmas tree and is having trouble getting into her building, and he shows up out of the blue and helps her, because she falls down. The tree falls on top of her, so he shows up, helps her up, and helps her get the tree into her apartment. And they develop a friendship. Not so much a romance, but they become very close. And as the movie goes along, the cops are still trying to find this so-called hitman, and they see him with her, and they begin to become suspicious of him. I don't know exactly how they put together that, why they'd be suspicious of him, but that's how the movie plays out. And so it's sort of like the relationship between a woman and a man, and he's a hitman. She doesn't know that, and she also doesn't know that he saw her before they met, and what will happen when the truth comes out. So anyway, that's The Merry Gentleman. All right, number 8, we have a film from 2018 called Pretenders. And this is another film by James Franco, a guy whose work I'm a big fan of. And now he directed this film, but he also no, not this one. He directed this film, and he has a small role in the movie. I think he's only in like 2 or 3 scenes, maybe. Plays like a filmmaker or something. Anyway, this one primarily stars Jack Kilmer, who's Val Kilmer's son. What's his name? Shameik Moore from Dope, that movie. And what's her name? Jane Levy from Evil Dead and Fun Size, the Evil Dead remake. And this one is sort of like a love triangle movie where Jack Kilmer meets Jane Levy's character outside of in a retro movie theater, and she bums a smoke off him out on the street out in front of the theater, and then he sort of becomes infatuated with her, and so he's talking with his friend Shameik Moore, who plays Phil. Jack Kilmer plays Terry. Jane Levy plays Catherine. And so he talks with his friend Phil, and Phil says, she's obviously a fan of these kind of films, so you should hang out here and I'll help you. We'll try and find her. So they do finally meet her again, and they strike up a friendship, all three of them. Now Phil makes it clear he's not interested in her. He likes downtown girls, as he says. And so Terry as time goes by, he does become involved with Catherine, but then Phil also becomes involved with Catherine, and that sort of puts a strain on Terry and Phil's relationship. And this involves three different time periods. It's like 3 different years. It starts in 79, jumps to 83, and then jumps again to 86, and then the movie goes like maybe month and few weeks after that before it ends. And it explores the relationship between the two guys and the girl in 79, and then how it progresses in 83, and also their careers. Phil is a photographer, becomes a famous photographer. Terry starts out as a student filmmaker in school, and then transitions to being a film critic, and then transitions back into being sort of a writer on his way to becoming a filmmaker again. And this one, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'd say a good 95% of the film, I'm watching it, I'm liking the film because the performances are great. It's a well-shot movie, another great one by James Franco. But I'm watching the movie and I'm wondering, like, I'm waiting for the point. What is the point of the story? And it does, as I thought in my head on watching it, it's probably going to show up in the last 5-10 minutes of the movie, and it does. So it is worth, if you're wondering where this movie's going, you will find out where it's going. You may be feeling a little bit, not let down, but it doesn't have an absolute resolution to the film. You are left a little hanging. It's not exactly a happy ending, but it will get to a point. So I'll leave it at that. So that was Pretenders, or The Pretenders. It's credited both ways, I think. Number 7, we have a film from 2015 called The Legend of Barney Thompson. Another directorial debut. This one by Robert Carlyle. Begbie from the Trainspotting movies, if you will. He was also in that show Once Upon a Time, which I need to try and get into again. Anyway, this is Robert Carlyle's directorial debut, and this one involves a barber, Barney Thompson, played by Robert Carlyle. And he just has a job. He likes his job as a barber, but he's not well regarded by his coworkers or his boss, or his boss's father, who's the ultimate boss. Excuse me. And he's about to be fired. And on the day he's going to be fired, he gets in an argument with his boss in a scuffle, and then he has scissors in his hand, and accidentally they fall to the ground, and he accidentally stabs his boss, and his boss dies. Well, he has to get rid of the body. And his mom, played by Emma Thompson, ends up helping him, and the cops investigate, dismiss him as a suspect, and everyone wonders where his boss has gone. Well, his boss's dad takes over, played by great performance by James Cosmo, also from Trainspotting, and one of the lead investigators is played by Ray great role for him. And what ends up happening is another co-worker, I don't know if he begins to suspect something, but he inadvertently kills him as well, accidentally. And he has to get rid of another body. And it turns out his mom is very good at getting rid of bodies. And there is a particular reason for that, but I won't get into it. It's a nice little gem to reveal as you're watching the movie. And it's very funny. It's definitely a dark comedy, but it's very funny. Robert Carlyle plays a very good, not a fish out of water, but a inadvertent accidental murderer, and how much worse can his life get as the movie goes on. Things keep going wrong. And will he get out of it, and how? So that is The Legend of Barney Thompson. Number six, we have a film from 2015, a film by Takashi Miike called Yakuza Apocalypse. And this one is so weird. Oh my goodness, this movie's so weird. But it is very entertaining. It involves Japanese Yakuza gangs. And there's one, the main guy is character of Kageyama, and he works for the boss of the gang is Genyo Kamura, and he's a kind, generous boss, but it turns out that he's also a vampire. And one day these vampire hunters come upon him in the alley and attack him and defeat him and ultimately kill him and decapitate him. Well, Kageyama finds his body and picks up his head, and the head comes to life and basically says, you need to take over from me, and you need to become a Yakuza vampire, and he bites him. So he turns into a vampire, and he ends up inadvertently biting several people, and they all instantly turn into vampires. So it sort of turns into like a Yakuza vampire gang. And there's also the vampire hunters coming after them, and there's this one like enforcer that comes after them, and it's this guy in a giant plush frog costume who's very good at martial arts, very tough fighter, and he, even under his costume, he still has these like frog hands and a smaller frog mask. It's, as I said, this movie's super strange, but it's very violent, but it's also very entertaining. And you're just watching the movie like, where is this going? What you're wondering, what weird scene can top the weird selection of scenes I've just watched? It's so strange, but it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. If you like Takashi Miike films, this is on point with his films. It's just a lot, I wouldn't say light-humored, but very wacky. Yeah, that's a good one. Very wacky film. Yakuza Apocalypse. All right, number 5, we have a film from 2015, a film by Gavin O'Connor, who did Miracle and Warrior and The Accountant. This film was called Jane Got a Gun. And this was one that I'd seen for a few years in the store, and I finally decided, I was scrolling by it, and as I said, on Google Play, and it was on sale, so I picked it up. This is a great Western. It stars Natalie Portman, Joel Edgerton, Noah Emmerich, and Ewan McGregor. And you basically got Natalie Portman, who's married to Noah Emmerich, and Noah Emmerich comes home one day, well, the character, Ham, and she's obviously Jane, comes home one day, and he's been shot up by the Bishop Boys. He says the Bishop Boys are coming. Bishop Boys are a gang led by Bishop himself, and that's Ewan McGregor. And so while he's resting in bed, injured, she goes to Dan, played by Joel Edgerton, an old acquaintance of hers, for help to defend her homestead. And he wants nothing to do with her. They have a past, and it didn't end well. And the movie sort of, it plays to a certain point, and then it goes back to show why the Bishop boys are coming after Ham and Jane. And then it also goes back again to show the past between Jane and Dan. And I won't say, because it's interesting to see, okay, what's the explanation between what's going on right here, and this tells you, and then what explains what went on between Jane and Dan, and this tells you, and then it comes back to the present, so you have the basis of the story going forward on how the movie's going to finish. That's as much as I'll say. It's a very, very well made Western. Jane Got a Gun. Number 4, we have a film from 2019 called Our Friend. Another one I found through Google Play. Watched the trailer. This looks great. So I picked it up, and it is great. I didn't know until I watched the movie, or I didn't look into it or had forgotten, but I didn't notice until the end of the movie that this is based on a true story. The main guy in the film, played by Casey Affleck, is a writer, and wrote an article for a magazine and basically told his story, and it got published, and that was the basis for this film. And it's basically, you have Casey Affleck is married to Dakota Johnson. They have a couple little girls, and she gets cancer, and he's having trouble taking care of her and his 2 little girls. So his best friend, played by Jason Segel, decides to move in, and he leaves his life in another town, his girlfriend and his job, and moves in to help his best friends, because he's best friends with both Dakota Johnson's character and Casey Affleck. Let me give you character names. Casey Affleck plays Matthew Teague, Dakota Johnson plays Nicole Teague, Jason Segel plays Dane Fauchot. And you've also got Gwendolyn Christie in there, Cherry Jones, little cameos sprinkled in there, and the kids. And so he basically moves in to help his best friend, who's dealing with his dying wife and his kids, and it turns out that it's terminal. She's going to die. And he basically just, sort of like you'd have a nanny or a caregiver move in, he moves in to help out with everything. Taking care of her, taking care of him, and taking care of the 2 girls. And it's a pretty sweet film. And it jumps around a lot, but every time it jumps around, you see little typewritten letters come across the screen saying, like 2009, 1 year before diagnosis, and it'll jump back to 3 years before diagnosis, and it'll jump to 1 year or 2 years after diagnosis. So you see the progression of events leading up to it, and how the cancer is progressing in her, and what their life is like then, now, and what it will be like. So, very, very well done movie. Our Friend. Number 3, we have a film from earlier this year called Willys Wonderland. And this one I had heard a little about, that it was sort of like a version of Five Nights at Freddy's, a popular game where you're a overnight midnight security guard in this amusement restaurant, and the animatronic animals come to life and try and kill you. Never played it, but I've heard a lot about it for years, and they're trying to make a movie out of it. Well, this other filmmaking team made a movie that is like it, and apparently not a ripoff, otherwise they would have tried to stop the production, I guess. But this one's notable because it's a Nicolas Cage film, and Nicolas Cage doesn't utter a single word throughout the whole movie. He is driving along, and he drives over these spikes on the road and blows out his tires. Well, he needs to fix his car, and the mechanic says, I won't have the parts here till tomorrow. It's going to cost this. And he goes, well, he offers him his credit card, and he's like, we don't take plastic, just take cash. He looks at the ATM, the ATM's busted. It's like, okay, to help pay for this, we'll make a deal. You keep an eye on this place, Willys Wonderland, overnight, tidy it up, keep an eye on it, and your car will be fixed in the morning and you can go on your way. Well, as it turns out, this restaurant was shut down for a reason. One of the people working there, the head of the staff, was a satanic serial killer and was killing people who were patrons of that place. And then when the police got onto them, they decided to perform some ritual and killed themselves and put their souls into the bodies of these animatronic animals, who then started to kill people in town. It sounds dark, but it's a very funny, entertaining movie, because you get this guy who you don't know who he is or nothing about him, but he starts to clean up the place, and then the machines start to attack him, and he starts taking them out one by one. But there was something one of the guys had told him before he took the job there, and it was like, make sure you stick to your brakes. Don't want to get worn out. So he has this alarm on his watch set for whatever time to take periodic breaks. Regardless of what he's doing, fighting a monster, he'll kill the monster, and then whatever, and then he hears the beep beep beep, takes his break. There's even one part where some of these kids who were trying to burn the place down end up getting inside, and he has a knife out. He's going to attack this one monster, and he hears the alarm go off, hands the knife to the girl, goes and takes his break. It's very strange, but very, very funny. Just watched this one just the other night with my girlfriend, and I think she liked it for what it was. It was entertaining. It's entertaining. That's really all. That's the main point of it. Yeah, it's entertaining. It's very off the wall. Willys Wonderland. All right, number 2, we have a film from 2019. Another film directed by James Franco, but this one actually stars James Franco. And this one was actually shot in 2014. Excuse me. And then it was shelved for several years because I think one of the production companies went out of business, and then it finally got, released by another company a couple of years ago. This one's called Zeroville. And this one, if I were ever to like talk to James Franco, I would say that I think David Lynch would be proud of this film that he's made. It's very weird, but it's very, not psychedelic, but it's very weird in the best ways. Because you've got this character name played by James Franco. It's Ike. Can't remember his last name, but a character played by Seth Rogen, who is supposedly playing a version of John Huston, I think, because the movie takes place in the 70s. No, starts around 1969. Calls him Vicar because he was in a seminary for years and hadn't seen a movie until he was like a teenager or something. So he calls him Vicar, and that name sticks, and he always calls himself Vicar. You've got Seth Rogen playing, they call him Viking Man, but he's playing a version of John Huston. You have Megan Fox playing an actress named Soledad Paladin. You have Joey King in there, Jackie Weaver's in there, Dave Franco is in there, Craig Robinson, cameo by Gus Van Sant, Danny McBride is there, Mike Starr, Horatio Sands. There's one scene where they're down in the Philippines supposedly shooting Apocalypse Now, but they couldn't say that for copyright reasons. And you have all these actors, and you can tell, and all these actors playing. Well, that clearly is supposedly George Lucas. That's supposed to be Steven Spielberg, Brian De Palma, all in the same scene. And James Franco's character Vicar becomes an editor working with Jackie Weaver. and he becomes a very famous editor and jumps from movie project to movie project to movie project. But he's also obsessed with Soledad Paladin, played by Megan Fox. And he's sort of like it's not like he's autistic, or he's very anti-social. He's a very odd character. The way he plays him. Like, before he moved to Hollywood, he shaved his head because his favorite movie is A Place in the Sun, starring, I think it says it stars Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor. And he shaves his head. And you can see it on the poster. He shaves his head and he tattoos the picture of Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift on the back of his head. And it's such a strange movie, but in a completely different way than, say, Yakuza Apocalypse. But it's such a well-made movie. And apparently it's based on a book, which I would like to read one day. Anyway, that's Zeroville. Oh, yeah, the movie starts in 1969. He moves to Hollywood on the day the Manson family murdered, like, Roman Polanski's wife and all those other people. So the day, and he gets caught by the cops, and then the next day he's let go because I guess they had nothing on him. But it's literally like, that's the first scene, and then the rest of the movie happens. It's very, very strange. Okay, Zeroville. All right, number 1, we have a film from 2010 called Shanghai. Now, I can't remember if I had heard this title years ago and then just forgot about it. It seemed intriguing, and then I completely forgot about it. But I noticed it not too long ago on Google Play and picked it up. And it's directed by Michael Halfstrom, and it stars John Cusack, Ken Watanabe, Chow Yun-fat, Gong Li, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And anyone else? Gemma Chan is in there. Franco Potente, David Morse, Rinko Kikuchi. So it has a great cast. And you basically, it takes place in Shanghai, and you have John Cusack, who works in naval intelligence, and he comes to Shanghai because his best friend and co-worker in naval intelligence, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, has been murdered, and he wants to find out why and by who. And he ends up getting involved, working undercover at a Nazi. He has a cover of being a Nazi sympathizer, and he gets a job at a German newspaper in Shanghai, because apparently there's all different factions and cultures in Shanghai, like French, American, German, Japanese, Chinese, and stuff. And works at a German newspaper, and he's trying to network and find out how things work there and what's going on and who killed his friend. And he gets involved with I think it's Chow Yun-fat, who's involved with the Yakuza, and Ken Watanabe, who is involved with the Chinese police, or Chinese army, I think, and Gong Li, who's married to Ken Watanabe. Frank Potente is married to a German friend of his, and not the point, but I was just trying to explain the characters, I suppose. And it's it's definitely a mystery, but it's also just like finding out all about how things work in Shanghai, and it's leading up to, like, World War II kind of has been building and building, but the movie builds up until, I think, like 3/4 of the way through the film, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. Everything had been leading to that, and then it happens, and all of a sudden the Japanese are going to take over Shanghai. And so most of the movie happens before that, and then that happens, and it's like, we got to get the hell out of Dodge. And that, I think I'll stop there, because as the mystery unfolds, it's a great journey to watch. This movie. It's gorgeous. All right, so that is all for this one. I hope you liked it. I had said to my girlfriend that I think this was gonna be, I was really gonna like this video, and I do. And I kept adding movies and kept adding movies. I'm like, I kept putting it off because I got to keep watching these films so I can get the best 10. And at some point I had to cut myself off because I still have a few more. But I'll just do it, and then they can be lumped into another list somewhere. I don't know. I just wanted to get this done because it had been over a month since my last video, and I used to do them a lot more often. Anyway, had a great time. Hope you did too. Like and subscribe, comment, suggestions, the whole shebang, and I'll see you next time. Toodles!